We are live and focused on Fort Worth. It is time to get connected with me, your host, Camille Washington, a local Dallas-Fort Worth real estate agent. Tonight, we have a very special guest, wealth and real estate planning attorney, Miss Sharisa Alexander.
Hi, how are you? It's good to have
Hi.
you. Hi.
Thank you. Thank you. So, for those joining me for the first time, welcome. Thank you so much. We are wrapping up season 1 of the D's of Real Estate. These are life events that you face that start with the letter D that voluntarily or involuntarily cause people to move. So far, we have covered diapers, debt, deployment, divorce, and tonight, death. But we're going to make positive of the things that you can do to be proactive and protect your family. And guess what? Since season 1 has been so popular, we're coming back with season 2. We're going to have diamonds, degrees, downsizing, disability, and distance. Welcome, Attorney Alexander. I'm so glad you're here. Tonight, we're talking about legacy. But first, I want to talk about you, a local Fort Worth legend. I am a huge fan of your Legacy and Lattes event that you host. But when you aren't drinking coffee and talking law, where are you going for dinner in Fort Worth?
Well, you know what? I work a lot, so I don't get to go out too much for dinner. So usually you'll catch me eating and working, and I like to hang out at the Masses. It's just a simple chain restaurant, Mediterranean restaurant, really good. I'm into
On Camp Bowie?
Yeah. Well, there's one on Camp Bowie and there's one, on Camp Bowie. Yeah, that's the one I go.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I actually told a teammate. Yeah, and they're pretty healthy.
Yeah.
I mean, given that it's Mediterranean.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. I've always wanted to try that place. It's near the Sprouts on Camp Bowie.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And then there's a really good Mediterranean restaurant on West 7th Street called La Terra. They just opened. It's really, really good.
La Terra. That sounds so familiar.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Great. So I love Mediterranean. I'll definitely be trying one or both of those. So you've had an incredible career from Texas A&M Law, being general counsel for the school district and running your SYA firm. You call yourself a personal family law attorney and now wealth attorney.
Yeah.
Most people think of lawyers when you call them when things go wrong, but we're talking and calling you while things are still going right in our life. So, I would like to hear a little bit more about your why and how you built your firm.
Well, first let me clarify. Actually, although Texas A&M is now the school that I used to go to. My school was bought out by Texas A&M. I actually am a proud graduate of Texas Wesleyan School of Law.
Okay.
Bought out by Texas A&M, and then I moved on to working for the state for a while. I was a enforcement attorney, and then I became a partner at a firm. We focused on school law, and then that's when I went in-house as general counsel for a school district. But doing all that law in that area of law, although it's great, and I definitely felt like it was a beneficial area of law, it just never resonated with me and what I really wanted to do. There were a few incidences in my life where I knew that having proper planning would have been beneficial for me as a young woman. I was a young single parent. I actually am from Austin, Texas, and I moved here as a young woman, and I was a single mom. I had a 3-year-old, and I had gotten sick at 23 years old and was in the hospital, and I didn't have anyone to get my son. And if I had died or became incapacitated and didn't have the proper mental health or just the wherewithal to ask his daycare teacher to come and get him, he could have very well ended up in CPS. And so I wanted to be that attorney for the person that I needed at age 20. And then my brother passed away at 32, and he passed away prematurely. And we didn't have an input on his funeral arrangements, and his wife accidentally arranged his funeral on my mom's birthday, which was very unfortunate for us. And then I had my grandmother who passed at almost 101. She thought she had a proper plan in place, and the plan that she had failed her, and it ended up where there was a lot of conflict and chaos around her burial and around her assets. And I just didn't want that to happen for another family. And I thought over the years, I need to do something different. And so I wanted to step out on faith faith and bet on myself. I built millions of dollars for other people's practices. Why not invest in myself? And so I decided that I would venture into starting my own practice focused on foundational estate planning. And since it has evolved into just more than estate planning, because I'm also a licensed financial professional, so we also help with building your legacy as well as protecting it.
I love that. And let me tell you, that was a game changer by me attending your Legacy and Lattes event. There were so many parallels like that resonated with me. I lost my brother about 5 years ago, and there were certain items and things that I didn't, get that had we had a plan, and even if he had life insurance set up, which we'll get to, then his family could have been a little bit more taken care of and actually had time to grieve instead of being forced to just go back to work after a bereavement period.
Yes.
So thank you. Thank you for sharing the why behind that. So I'm a real estate agent, and I see the mess that happens when there is no plan in place. And let's kind of get into the stuff that keeps people up at night. So in your office, what is the single most common question people ask when they finally call you up?
Well, they really want to know what a trust is. And there's a lot of mystery around trust and whether they need one. That's really the question. And then also how much it costs. So those are always the bigger questions.
Okay. So people use those terms interchangeably. Trusts and wills. Can we talk about the difference?
Well, I like to say, so there are 3 types of plans. You have the state's plan for you, which is if you die intestate, that means that you've died and you did not have a will. And so that's the state's plan for you. The law has a specific way that it believes your assets should pass. You have no input, and your family would have to go to probate, and the courts would assign an executor over your estate, or if you're incapacitated, they would assign someone as a guardian. And if you have a will, it's one step better because you get to actually decide where your assets pass and who would take care of you in the case of an incapacitation. However, you still have to go to probate. So when you have a trust is like a will substitute. It's a convenient way of passing your assets the same way you would want to pass your actual assets in a will, but you'll put it in a trust so that it can easily pass along to the person or people that you want to inherit. And I always kind of give the analogy, it's like a little wagon or a basket, and you're creating that wagon, and then you're putting your toys in the basket so that you can pass it along to the person that or people that you will want to inherit outside of probate. Because in Texas, probate can be long and arduous and can be expensive, and it's public. And I often say that having a will, a lot of attorneys will be like, oh, we get the will because we, give them the will so we can get the probate. And people don't know that probate is expensive. And it's like filing a lawsuit against yourself using your money for the benefit of your creditors. And so trusts help you avoid that dilemma for your family.
Okay. So I want to ask a little technical question then, is why would a trust be better than a will?
Okay. So again, so it is public. So if you go to a will, your family, say for instance, you put all your stuff down. I want my house to go to this person. I want my money to go to this people. And I want this person to be the executor over my trust. They still have to go to the court to get permission to be actually assigned that role. And when you have a trust, it's automatic. And you don't actually have, and when you also have probate, you have to post that to your creditors to say, hey, creditors, this person has passed, come get your money. And so after you pay the money for court costs, attorney's fees, then you have your creditors come in and get their piece, and then the residuals goes to your family.
So what percentage are we talking about here? Is there a percentage of how much probate can cost a family?
Well, on average, if it's a simple simple will or estate, it can be anywhere from 10 to 4%. Moderate would be 4 to 7. And if you have a complicated estate, or if you have people who are contentious, it can be anywhere from 8 to 15%. So on average, if you average that all out, it's about 7% of the estate.
An estate is not just counting your home, it's all of the personal items in it, all of your bank accounts, everything.
Your accounts, tangible items, the values of your purses, your watches, your cars, your house, everything, that even the value of your life insurance policy. And then we know life insurance passes outside of the estate, but say for instance you forgot to assign a beneficiary. Now that money can actually end up being a part of the estate. So it can be quite expensive, and it can be a little bit of an arduous task. It can last anywhere from 10 months to 24 months to get through.
Wow, that long. Okay, so just doing some simple math here. Average home in Tarrant County is about 400,000. So your value of your house plus, let's say you had a little insurance policy, rounded up, we're saying $1 million just for clean math. 7% of that, that's $70,000 that your family is just not getting.
Yeah, that's about right.
Okay. So a trust can avoid that 70,000 completely, but a will not.
Right. The only
Wow.
way, so what a lot of people don't tell you is, oh, if I have a trust, and I have had clients come to me and say they have a trust, and I'm like, okay, have you funded the trust? And the word funding is kind of like a misnomer. People think cash immediately, like money goes into the trust. What I mean by funding is that means ensuring that all your assets have some way of passing through the trust, because the trustee has to have the ability to transfer the assets. So the house, say for instance, you own a house, instead of it being in your name, it now needs to be in the name of the trust. You retitle the house. Your bank accounts, instead of having the bank accounts in the name of the trust, in your name, it'll be in the name of the trust. Anything with a beneficiary designation, instead of having individuals named as a beneficiary, you'll name the trust, and then the trust will give the directives on how the money will pass once you pass away, and once those funds are now in the trust. As far as like when you pass, the insurance policies will pay the trust, and now the trustee can have the ability to divide it.
Okay, so something I learned too when doing the process was, in the state of Texas, a will has to be signed in ink versus if it's typed up. So can you talk about why that is?
Well, right now, so with technology changing and things like that, and there's a lot of online signings and there's a lot of virtual notaries, and just after doing a lot of the research on it, there's a gray area about whether something that's signed as a virtual notary is appropriate. So right now, the jury is still out, and so I just would say, in order to make sure that you have a proper notarized document, that you would do it in person with two witnesses present in ink instead of doing it virtually.
Yeah. Actually, they kind of touch on this in real estate school. They talk about a holographic will. That's basically you took the time to write out the will, but because it wasn't notarized by two witnesses, then it's not a valid will.
Well, actually, a holographic will, and that's another thing. If you want to talk about wills and holographic wills, it's valid if you write it entirely in your hand. It has to be completely written in your hand and signed in your hand in order for it to be a valid holographic will. If any of it is typed, then it's nullified. It has to be in your hand.
Yeah, it's a lot of people I've seen, I'll call them the DIYers. They'll say, oh, well, I've just found a template online and I have a will and I'm fine. Well, there's some complications behind that. You got to make sure that that's done right, but that still does not avoid the taxes portion of it being in a trust versus the will. Mm-hmm. So, okay. And let's dive a little deeper into trust. Some of us have heard the term trust fund babies. They think something only the super wealthy. And so can we talk about different types of trust, revocable versus irrevocable?
Okay, so what we're talking about now when it comes to how to pass your assets at death that's a revocable trust. And really it's just a will substitute. And it's a grantor trust. It's recognized by the IRS as a grantor trust. So that way it's like you become the avatar. You the trust owns everything, but you can make changes. You're the one that's in control. So you're the grantor and the beneficiary. But once you pass, then it becomes irrevocable. And you want it to become irrevocable because you don't want somebody coming in and changing what you want to happen that you decided while you were alive. And then in your trust, if you have a more complicated estate where you might want to do some trust based planning to avoid some taxes, or if you're married and you want to require some prenup provisions, or if you're wanting to pass your assets to your children in a way that is protected, so they, just in case, if you want some spendthrift clauses, if they're not really responsible with money, maybe they're adults and you want to make sure that they go to school or have some financial classes, you might want to pass it in trust. And so those would be irrevocable trusts. So anything that's an asset protection trust, or if you want to put some sort of specific provisions or some tax savings trust, those are irrevocable. But as long as it's revocable, you can change it.
Okay. So the key is revocable while you're alive, and then it converts to irrevocable.
And if it's irrevocable, you lose a lot of your control. So if it's irrevocable, you cannot control it. You would need to have a third party be the trustee for your benefit. So you lose a lot of control.
Okay. That's a great explanation, actually. And we're going to talk about insurance, but what is a ILIT, insurance, a life insurance trust?
Life insurance trust. Some people do life insurance trusts if they're wanting to save on for it's a tax strategy. Also, for example, I've had a life insurance trust because a person wanted to use those specific proceeds to pay off a particular debt when they passed away. So that life insurance trust, the trust is drafted to say, this trust is for this particular house, and the proceeds for this life insurance will fund this particular trust, so that this trust can pay off that house. So some of those are drafted so for tax benefits, or to make sure monies are flowed to pay for certain items, like paying off a house.
Okay. So speaking on the life insurance aspect, we want to make sure that the point of life insurance is to make sure that we have enough, which I learned recently is that you want to make sure that you have enough for not only whenever you pass, but if you have children, to get them to that dependency age, whether that's plus college, not just 18, but maybe 25, and enough to pay off your debt so it doesn't eat up all of your 401k money. So I want to talk a little bit. Yeah. That's a good summary. I did good. Okay. So how does that fit in an estate plan, though?
Well, so first of all, we want to say life insurance passes outside of the estate. So if you do have life insurance, that whoever you have put as the beneficiary, that's who's going to receive those assets. And so with estate planning, not necessarily, the trustee won't be able to reach those unless you put the trust as the beneficiary, and then that's how those proceeds will fund into the trust, and then you can divide them out equally amongst, or however you would want them to pass to your beneficiaries. But one thing when we do look, because when we are doing a trust, we see all of your assets, we know what you have, and so we're going to be evaluating to see, do you have enough life insurance? Like you said, if you own a couple of houses, or if you have some mortgages, or your family has been accustomed to like your wife is accustomed to you having a certain income, and now you've lost your spouse. How much money do you think your family's going to need to replace you for an extended period of time? So it's important to make sure you have enough life insurance to help as your family transitions and after they've lost you, and to pay off those debts and things like that. But also on top of that, life insurance, if you have the right type of policies, you can use them as opportunity funds to grow your wealth. There are certain policies that you can invest your money, and they can grow at a 7 to 10% interest rate on the S&P 500 with no bottom losses. And you can now become your own bank and utilize these as strategies to not only have a death benefit so that you can leave a legacy for your family, but you can also utilize them, like you said, to pay off your debt and to have some living benefits as well as supplemental income while you're alive. And these policies actually can build a legacy that you can roll over for your family or for your children. So they're really worth looking into. And so if we were to evaluate your assets, we would say, hey, listen, you have this, money just sitting in this CD that's only making 3%, or it's sitting in a supposedly, what are they, high yield savings?
Money marking savings accounts.
Savings account making nothing, and they're not keeping up with inflation. We would recommend rolling it into something that is going to grow a lot faster, safer, and you're actually learning how to leverage money. Because what do they say? Money in motion makes money. And so we'll evaluate your assets to let you know, hey, listen, we think this is an opportunity for you to grow your assets.
So yes, I actually want to speak on that. So I'm fascinated with how index universal life insurance works within a legacy plan. The be your own bank strategy is trending, but it's often misunderstood. So can you explain how does like a permanent life insurance policy act as a battery to keep that trust fund growing while you're still alive?
Okay, so imagine, so first let's talk about it. It's an index, we know how money grows. There's three ways. It's either fixed, variable, or index. If it's fixed, it's growing slowly, slow and steady, but it's not keeping up with the race because of inflation. Then you have the variable accounts, and it dips and goes down, goes up, and you can suffer those bottom losses, and then it can take time to correct. And with index universal life insurance, you don't have the bottom losses, and you keep up with the gains, and they gain about 7 to 10%. And we have some policies where you can actually get 110% of the S&P 500 that we can refer you to, and it's incrementally growing. And say, for instance, if you had a policy that had a life insurance balance, say you have a death benefit of $100,000. I'm trying to just use round numbers.
Sure. Yeah, sure.
And just say the cost of insurance for it is $1,000. Whatever you're putting in above and beyond would be invested on the market. And we can build these policies as big as your 30% of your adjusted gross income for the last 3 years. And say, for instance, you can put in $100,000 every year. That $100,000 would be invested on the market at that 7 to 10% growth. And say, for instance, you wanted to take a loan from it and utilize it to pay your bills or to invest it into something else. If you took $50,000 out, it has 70 to 90% liquidity within 48 hours. So if you take $50,000 from that $100,000, it will still be invested at that $100,000 if you take it as a participation loan. And say you take the participation loan at 5%, but the balance is growing at 7 to 10%. That means you've arbitraged. So now, if you decide to never pay that $50,000 back, it will just come off the death benefit. That original amount of $100,000 is still being invested at that $100,000 rate, and you're just making money off your debt. And say, for instance, you wanted to pay your bills on a credit card. You pay those credit card bills, and on a credit card that you're getting, say, a 2% cash back. As long as you're paying it back before the interest hits, you can use that, take a participation loan, pay off the credit card, and just keep that cycle going. You take a participation loan to pay off your credit card, use your credit card to pay those expenses, and just keep it going and making money off your debt. And so those are opportunities for you to build your wealth, grow your wealth, and actually have a death benefit in the process. And they have living benefits in these products as well.
Okay, so I think she's cracking the code, guys, to what you're trying to figure out, how these trust fund babies are, real wealthy, just living, their kids go to college and they're driving G-Wagons. And it's like, how do these regular people do it? Yeah, you just explained it. Because if you start this IUL for a child and it's growing, they could basically have their own salary paid out while they're in college and not having to work for somebody else and borrow against their death benefit, as you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I have a great question in the comments saying, can you touch on the health aspect to qualify for life insurance?
Well, that's a great question, because you do have to qualify. These aren't things that you could just get instantly. So there will be an application process. You do have to do a medical examination for a lot of them. Some of them waive them, especially if they're children. But you do have to qualify. And some people do have medical conditions that may disqualify them. But that's not just because you have a health condition. As long as you're maintaining those health conditions, I've still seen people get approved.
Yeah. So I think I've seen like charts, the younger you start, the less expensive it is to get started. So somebody under 30, I've been seeing plans, under $50 per
Yeah,
se for like $1 million on a term. And then also your weight has factors,
yeah, they ask a lot of questions.
superior ratings.
Yeah.
Tobacco use, alcohol consumption, risks, like, what kind of hobbies you do. So
Yeah, they
those
ask
were,
questions.
yeah, those are some of the things that I've noticed or come across. So,
But they're not deal breakers. So I would say it's always worth to get evaluated and then submit the application. If they say no, they just say no.
yeah. Yeah. Okay. So now that you're an expert wealth attorney, can we expand on? There's a lot of people who are excited about, okay, if I have an extra $500, why? How should they invest this in a life insurance? Say that they're at the point of diversity. Okay, they're maxing out their 401k, they're funding a full Roth, and now they want to utilize this be your own bank strategy. Why should they consider putting it in a properly structured IUL?
Well, everyone is different. So I
Okay.
wouldn't be able to, like, if you have an extra $500, we would need to look at your total picture before making the recommendation for IUL. And, and not necessarily, I know that there have been a lot of traditional ways of, and we've been instructed on how to, save and grow our money. So if you have that traditional hat on, this might like somehow shake your amygdala a little. Because we're going to recommend some different things. Like if we see a 401k that's just sitting there, you might think, oh, well, 401k is what I'm supposed to have. But we may say, we might think you need to take that and put it in maybe an index annuity that's going to grow and get you a 16% bonus. And it's not going to be subject to those bottom losses. So I can't answer that question clearly.
Sure.
In a picture. And we would look at the whole totality of your circumstance and then make recommendations based off of that. And we'll look at those natural things. Like if you have an old 401k that you're just kind of ignoring, we may suggest putting it into something different, something safer that's going to grow faster.
Okay, please tell them how old a child will have to be to take advantage of an IUL and why it's a good option.
To take advantage, how old? Can he expound on that when you mean take advantage of maybe?
I guess starting one. How old does a child need to be for them to start one?
You can start them as a small child. I know people who have 10-year-olds that have IULs, 5-year-olds. I mean, you can start them. There are some policies that allow you to start an IUL as a small child. And if at 18 you want to roll it over until their name and they can take over their policy once you've been investing in it, you would be the beneficiary of their policies. And then you can maybe, once they reach a certain age, if you're wanting to switch it over to them, you can, and as part of their legacy building. But again, when you say take advantage, I'd like to know, does that mean should you roll it over to them, or should you make your trust the beneficiary? I'd like to have them expand upon that question a little bit.
Okay. Well, I'll see if they expand upon that. 24 hours after birth and guaranteed insurability.
What?
24 hours after birth and guaranteed insurability.
Yes.
Yes.
I would. Yes. I don't know. We'd have to look at the policies, and I think he's wanting to point to something specific. Is that a statement, or is he saying that's when they could take advantage of it?
I don't know, but let's move on to our next question. The benefits or pros and cons of an individual trust versus a joint trust for a family.
An individual choice. So are you married? Because if you're married, I would definitely say you would have, typically you'll see couples who are married, especially if you've been married a while, you would have a joint trust, and your revocable living trust is together as a married couple. And then after your first death, then that's when you can decide how your money passes. So generally, if you've been married together, in Texas being a community property state, your assets will pass to your spouse. And then so if you've amassed a certain amount of wealth together as a family, you would want to make sure that that money is passed to your children ultimately. So a lot of people put safeguards around that marital trust and of those marital properties into a marital trust. They may put prenup provisions in there just to ensure that the surviving spouse is prudent with that money before passing it to their children. But usually it starts as husband and wife together. And then when they pass, it can be either go into a survivor's trust or some sort of disclaimer trust or a Clayton election. And those are some technical terms that we can talk about if you meet with me. And then after it passes to the kids.
Okay, so I think since we're talking about marriage and joint, this is a good opportunity for our question regarding if you have a joint trust and a divorce happens, what's the next step?
Well, we've had this come up recently, and I would recommend that you start thinking about going ahead and getting your separate trusts and deciding how you're going to divide. If you have some assets that you already consider separate property, or if you can agree to go ahead and decide what separate property is before your divorce, I would go ahead and do your separate trust.
Okay. And can you explain getting a post-nuptial? So now we're already married and you have a business interest in regards to co-ownership with property in a joint trust. So
post, and you're already married.
Mm-hmm.
And you
post-nuptial assignment of business interest in regards to a co-ownership in a business with property in a joint trust if a divorce happens.
Okay. I may need to have you guys, again, this is educational purposes, and that's a very specific question that I need to get a little bit more details to understand it. But it's prudent if you have enough assets to where you're now thinking, well, let's put some agreements around it. In case of divorce, you can be very clear about how your assets should pass. I do recommend getting a post-nup or prenup before you get married. But I would like to get a little bit more specifics about that question so that I can answer properly.
You needing to see more of the operation agreement, LLC, business setup. Okay. Fair. And do you recommend trust for siblings?
Trust for siblings. And
I guess, do they each have their own trust? Do each sibling needs to have their own trust?
Okay, so again, it's all about what the person wants. So if we're talking about a testamentary trust where we're doing this to pass money, pass our assets after we pass. And if you are concerned about how your children may spend money or if they're underage, I would recommend creating sub-trusts so that you can put some controls around it. And in those sub-trusts, you can put whatever specifications you want. If they're brother and sister, you can have them mirror each other. Say, for instance, you're married and you ultimately want your children to inherit. You can split it 50-50, and you can either be specific for them individually, mirror them. If you want to put any spendthrift clauses in there, yes, I would recommend it if it's your intention to have a little bit more control over their assets and how your assets pass to them. Yes.
Okay. Seems like we have a lot of business owners on here, so I want to just kind of give an update on FinCEN requirements. So as of March 1st, any property that you purchase with cash in a trust or LLC corporation, you have to go through FinCEN requirements, reporting requirements. This is to reduce money laundering and to prevent foreign entities coming and buying up all of our properties with these shells. So that does require reporting requirements that used to not have. I think the threshold was 300,000. So you want to make sure that you're working with a real estate agent and a trust attorney that are up to date on all of the regulations, compliance, and things like that are up to date with current law.
And I also wanted to point out that if you're purchasing a house that's going to be financed and it's not your homestead and you're passing it in trust, you really want to be careful just to make sure that it's not an irrevocable trust. You want to make sure it's a revocable trust and a grantor trust. Otherwise, you might invoke that due on sell clause. So it's important to make sure it's revocable.
Okay. I'm glad that you brought that up. So since we were kind of talking about laws and policies that have been updated, has there been anything in the last 5 years regarding inheritance planning and how much you can transfer without it triggering taxes that the family have to pay.
Yeah, one, I guess, a positive thing that the big beautiful bill did was increase the federal tax exemption rate to 15 million. It was already
Wow.
pretty high. It was like 13.7 something percent. So it was pretty high. So if you don't make, if your estate isn't valued over 15 million, you're not going to have an estate tax. And Texas, we are blessed not to have any estate tax here. But the thing is that we don't know what the estate tax exemption rate is going to be. It changes depending on who's in office and what party is in play. Because I know at the end of 2025, it was actually scheduled to sunset and go down to around 5 to 7 million, I believe. So now it is pretty high. So that's not something that the general public has to worry about.
Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have covered a lot in our time here with attorney Alexander, which I highly recommend you reaching out to her with any of these questions. And you offer consultations.
Yeah, we do. You can visit us at www.syafirm.com and schedule a 15-minute consultation with my legal assistant, and we can find a time on our calendar to do a life and legacy planning session. And during that session, we provide you homework, and we're really strict on our homework. We want you to do the homework so that we can get a good picture of your individual situation, and we'll do a deep dive into your plan and what will look right for you. And so we ask a series of questions to get an understanding of where your head is, what you're trying to do, what your values are, and we build a plan based on that.
And can you expand a little bit more of what your legacy latte event is and when your next one is?
So we have one tentatively scheduled for March the 14th. It's going to be contingent. I do have one also on the 28th in Waco, and I'm getting booked out pretty far, and so we're trying to manage it. So yeah. We may not have that one on the 14th, but just visit our website at www.syafirm.com or go to our IG page or our Facebook page at SYA Firm PLLC. That has a list of our events. Again, there's one in Waco on the 28th, and then we have one on the 14th in Fort Worth tentatively. And then we also offer some online events that are coming up as well.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. You did my estate plan this past year, I should say, and now I have that peace of mind. I mean, I had trouble sleeping, and I'm telling you, ever since I got it done, I feel like this sense of peace has come over me. And so I'm so grateful for that. And I just want to pass that feeling down to the next generation. And I like to always pour into the youth. I'm passionate about generational wealth, but I'm also passionate about pouring into the youth. So while estate planning feels like it's an old person's topic, legacy starts young. So what is one piece of advice you could give a young person in Fort Worth that's trying to build and protect what they own?
Oh, well, first I would say be like Camille.
Thank you.
Yeah, she is definitely a one percenter. She is young. She's on fire. She's doing what she's supposed to do. And she was a model client. She did her homework. She's on fire. She's forward thinking. And you're never too young to start building. That's my advice. You're never too young to start building, and you're never too young to start protecting. Because what did I tell you? At 23, I almost lost my life. At 32, my brother passed. So you never really know how old you are until you die, right? So just take advantage of the low-hanging fruit. And look at the tax code. The tax code gives us all the clues on what we need to be doing with our money to help grow it in a way that's tax advantage to us. And just doing the work. Going to the workshops, coming and doing a legacy plan with me, seeing what you have and what we can do for you.
I love that. So if someone's listening today and you've been putting this off, just like I was before I met attorney Alexander, what is the first step they can take today to start their legacy?
They can visit my website at www.syafirm.com and book a 15-minute consultation. And we can get started. And I noticed that Mr. Dunnan put in the section IRS section 7702, that's involving the insurance policies saying that any insurance policies, the money that you make is not taxable. So you can fund those policies up to the MEC. We call it MEC. That's if we can build it as big as we can get it. And as long as it doesn't go over that amount, it's tax-free dollars.
Wow. Dropping gems before we close out. I love that. I love that. Hey, this has been great. Thank you so much for coming on. And I highly encourage those that are local in Fort Worth, and now I hear in Waco, but if you are local, to attend this event, because something about just that presentation and seeing the real life scenarios that you provided, it really tugged on my heartstrings. I was like, oh, I can't delay this anymore. Like, I actually need to do this now. I also thought it was just something that you do like much later. I've been meeting more and more people that are in the retirement age, and I'm coming across clients. I think, I brought you one client who said, hey, I just got diagnosed with something and I need to switch this. I need to put my house into a trust immediately. I thought it was something that you do at that age range, 60 and up. I didn't know all of these advantages, and I've been just on fire ever since, like, okay, let's go. So now I'm here to help my friends and fellow colleagues and saying, hey, if you're a real estate agent and you need to link up with a trust attorney to serve your clients better, Attorney Alexander, SYA firm.
And there's a lot of young people who have businesses. Everyone, I see you guys on Facebook. You're becoming influencers. You have a business and you have something worth protecting. And so that's, if you have a business, if you have any kind of assets, it's important. If you have a job, it's important to go ahead and do your estate planning.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I didn't realize what that value was until you dollarized through the homework. Was like, kind of scratching my head. You get excited about this equity portion that you have, and then you don't realize, okay, the cost of doing the trust. And you do offer, you have several packages that you offer, from simple to hands off. So I think that's amazing. And just saying, okay, well, I didn't realize, whenever people try to justify, oh, I can't really afford this right now. Well, like, if you're getting a tax refund, this actually is the perfect time to use that money that can protect everything that you have in the event we don't know when it's our time, but to have it all protected. And the things that I've learned since then has just been life-changing, and I can now better serve my clients. So I'm here for it.
Well, I really appreciate you and this opportunity to just share knowledge, because I do consider this my ministry. And so I really appreciate this platform, and I appreciate you trying to sound the alarm for everybody.
Yeah. So I'm just going to touch on last minute questions. Great info. Thank you. Amen. Bingo. People were taught that a will is the end all be all, but please provide 3 reasons why only having a will can cost you.
Oh, 3 reasons why. I said it's like filing a lawsuit against yourself for the benefit with your money, for the benefit of your creditors. And so if you don't properly go through the probate process, many of your assets can escheat to the state, and then it can be very difficult for your family to actually get title to those properties or money. Good example, I had a client who had an uncle who wanted her to inherit his $100,000, but he did not. He only had a POD for her, which ends a POA, which ends at death. And so his stuff had to go through probate, and he had about 30 heirs. And so at the end of the day, she would have only got about $1,000. So it just didn't make sense for her to go through probate to get that money, because it wasn't going to pass in the way he intended, and she would have to spread it across many heirs. So it wastes a lot of time, money, and effort, and it may not be exactly how you want your assets to pass.
Okay. Good info. Yeah. So, hey, asset protection, I'm here for it. Anonymity, privacy, people not knowing what you have to go after you. So protecting from lawsuits, all of the things.
Protection from lawsuits, protection from just actually keeping people there. When people pass away, that's when a lot of people's true colors start. And so you get a lot of conflict and chaos. So it just puts a pin in all of that. It kind of, you made it clear, this is how I want my assets to pass. You can put clauses in there to say, do not contest this. And this is how I want it to pass. And that way it cuts down on the conflict, chaos, and confusion.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Attorney Alexander. I think that's all we have. That's all the time we have. Lots of great feedback and kudos and amens. And thank you for your information and thank you for your time.
Thank you for the opportunity.